Hello and welcome to the FatBoss Guide to Trilliax on Mythic in the Nighthold.
Yes, this is once again a very similar fight to how it is on Heroic, just like Chronomatic.
This is becoming a slogan, isn't it?
Yeah, just like Scorpion as well. And of course, as a result, you'll be doing pretty much the exact same things that you did on Heroic, but you just got to do them well. The only additional thing on Mythic that you'll need to deal with is that an ad will spawn towards the end of the encounter, and this ad will just cause you to deal with two different phases of the boss at the same time. Now, as the fight is so very similar to Heroic, let's just quickly go through the phases and cover some of the things that you'll need to do in order to keep everything clean on Mythic.
So to get this out of the way first, in Phase 1 there are way more cakes than what they were on Heroic, so much so that almost your entire raid has the responsibility of having to go out and soak the cakes rather than just your range team. And keep in mind this one important thing: the sooner you soak your first cake, the sooner you can soak your second and your third and your fourth, etc. for the rest of the fight. So as soon as you see a cake and you don't have a debuff, go out there and eat it. Also to note with these cakes, the debuff that you do get will slow you slightly more than what it does on Heroic, which makes dodging the Annihilation Beam in Phase 2 a little bit more difficult, and as a result you're forced to stand a little bit closer to the boss. However, if you filled up the entire middle of the room with puddles, you're just going to be taking a shit ton of damage and the healers aren't going to be able to keep you up. So it's vital during in Phase 1 and in Phase 3 that you stand towards the edges of the room. That way the goo isn't going to spawn in the middle, and also being spread on these sides of the wall makes picking up the cakes a lot easier. So bottom line in Phase 1, stand to the edges of the room, soak cakes, don't be shit. And that's pretty much all you need to know. As for Phase 2, it's exactly the same as just the Annihilation Beam. Make sure that you don't get hit by the knockback, so don't already be in the middle of the room, and just stay to the boss's side, and just make sure you don't get hit by the beam. Once the Annihilation Beam is over, you'll want to go and pick up the Succulent Feast that spawn, because the boss very shortly after this point will cast his Cleansing Rage, and any cakes or feasts that are up will explode. It doesn't really matter what players go and soak these, just like in Heroic. However, ranged DPS are probably the best candidates because they can actually make use of the shield absorb by going out and soaking the exploding robots, whereas melee DPS are probably better just nuking down the boss. During this last phase, any sterilized debuff players really should take advantage of having this debuff and standing on the robots, because the amount of energy that they gain from soaking the puddles is actually quite a bit higher on Mythic. So by standing on top of them, you reduce their energy, which means they can soak more puddles, which means you have more room. And apart from that, the fight will just continue to rotate through Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3. If you keep to all those things I just explained, you'll be absolutely fine. However, an ad will spawn.
Now, the first time you'll see an ad is when the boss enters his Maniac Phase for the second time. The ad will always spawn from the northeastern gate in the wall, so having Trilliax next to this point will allow you to stack them up immediately and cleave onto Trilliax as you nuke the living hell out of the ad. The reason the ad needs to die as soon as possible is that it will be spawning extra cakes, and of course, the fewer cakes you have left in the encounter, the better, and if you were to leave this ad up, it would spawn far too many cakes for the raid to handle. On top of this, the ad has a mana bar, and once this reaches 100%, he'll cast Cleansing Rage, and it works the exact same way as Trilliax's, and it will wipe your raid if you haven't got the encounter area completely free of cake. Now, this ad will gain mana in two ways. It will frequently gain a dispellable buff called Energize, which will grant it a large amount of mana every second. You need to dispel this as soon as possible, as otherwise you'll have a Cleansing Rage during Trilliax's Annihilation, which you can handle, and we actually did for the first few weeks, but it will require players to soak during the Annihilation, which is nearly a suicide mission for those without an immunity or a huge movement speed increase. Now, the second way this ad will gain mana is when Trilliax enters his Cleaner Phase. This will cause the ad to gain 1% mana every second. Now, really, the ad should be dying just as the boss enters the Cleaner Phase, but if the ad doesn't die quickly and remains active for the majority of this Cleaner Phase, it is super likely that it will cast a Cleansing Rage upon Trilliax's transition into the Maniac Phase, and this is very likely to hit at least a few cakes because, of course, the ad has been spawning cakes this entire time, the boss has been spawning cakes this entire time, and it's very likely to wipe you when combined with all of the ticking damage going on from Trilliax. So either way, when you're dealing with this ad, just make sure you dispel it and kill it off very quickly to avoid it reaching full mana. Once this ad does die, the fight pretty much returns to normal, except of course you're going to have a few more cakes. Once again, make sure everyone eats these and make sure the whole room is clear of any leftovers so that they don't explode when Trilliax enters Phase 1 for the third time. Now, at this point, if Trilliax is low and he's just cast his Cleansing Rage, in theory you can just ignore the cakes and kill him off before he enters Phase 1 for a fourth time, because that's when he's going to be casting Cleansing Rage again. Now, if you are to reach the fourth Phase 1, a new ad will spawn which has the same abilities as Trilliax during Phase 2. So he'll be doing pulsing damage out onto the raid, and once he reaches full mana, he'll do an Annihilation. As long as you just keep dispelling the ad's Energize debuff and just nuke Trilliax, the ad really just sits there and just is a bit annoying at most.
That's about it, really. It's
Yeah.
just all about that first ad, making sure you dispel it and kill it off as soon as you possibly can. And really, you should be able to kill the boss before the second ad spawns. And if the second ad does spawn, the boss is going to be so low that you can just ignore it and nuke the boss anyway. And that's it. So thank you very much for watching, guys. If this guide helped you out, then please do drop us down a like. If you'd like to see the written guide for this encounter, you can find that out on Wowhead. The link for that is in the description. And also, before we do go, we'd like to give a huge thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. You guys have been absolutely fantastic to us over the past few months. So thank you very, very much. And we shall see you all in the next video.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.